Good morning and welcome to the 2020 session finale of Live at the Legislature. Every week we tell you the inside scoops on the bills that are passing and the things that are going on at the state capitol. This morning we have with us House Majority Leader Della Belatti, who represents District 24, covering Makiki, Tantalus, Papakolea, Makali, Pava'a, and Manoa, parts of Manoa. Welcome, Majority Leader. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
This being the end of the session, which adjourned last week, about 2 months later than usual due to the coronavirus pandemic. Let me ask you right away, why did this session continue into July, and how was the House able to do its work passing bills with all the interruption in the pandemic?
Well, clearly the effects of COVID-19 on the world, on our state, really brought us to a standstill in March, April, and May. The legislature, like the rest of the community, took a pause, and I think it was a much needed pause. It also gave us an opportunity to figure out the process and procedures we needed to have in place to ensure the safety of our staff members, of our members, so that we could move forward and continue to do the work that we did. You know, James, we, like everybody else, learned how to telework very quickly, how to do distance working. And I think, you know, even though it was challenging, the work of the legislature continued, and you can see it in the 78 bills that we passed.
Yeah, we all have learned, just like this show, we had to learn to adjust and adapt. Well, back in January, when this session started, the legislature put together a rather ambitious package of bills aimed at making life better for working families in Hawaii. Did any of those bills pass the session?
No, I thank you for asking about that, because looking back and making my remarks for closing, it's really amazing to see the sea change that we went through. You know, you have to remember that at the beginning of session, we had record employment numbers. Practically everyone who wanted a job could have a job. Our economy was just buzzing along. There was so much hope and prospects for the future. And that was reflected in our joint majority package. And I want to thank the Senate and the governor. Senate's going to be coming on next. But we really had an ambitious plan to tackle income inequality, early learning, as well as affordable housing. And, you know, because of what's happened, and now we're at record unemployment rates, and that we're looking at food lines and things like that, we had to obviously kind of reassess what we were going to do with the majority package. I'm happy to report that on two of the key issues, affordable housing and early learning, you know, those are the two cost drivers. We were able to do a few things to move those issues forward. I think in the area of early learning and access to early learning in particular, we have continued to work to expand the preschool open doors program. We've continued to work to ensure that there is assessments of all of our keiki, or who will be entering the public school system. And we want to make sure that early learning access is something that all 3- and 4-year-olds can still achieve within 10 years. So we put that policy framework into place, as well as done a number of other things in the education arena. On affordable housing, we moved bills that would allow access to credits for the affordable housing developers to make sure that they can draw down when we made changes in the budget. You know, where we had put cash down for the large affordable housing package that we had passed several years ago, we moved those revenues from that cash into revenue bonds. So we still have a commitment to building affordable housing. And I'll also say that if you look at our CIP projects, many of the things that we've committed to building in terms of public infrastructure will go a long way to ensuring that affordable housing can continue to also move forward. So I'm pleased to report that in those two areas, we're still making progress. Clearly in the area of income inequality, now that we're seeing, 25% unemployment, and we're looking at Alice families now, increasing to 59% of the population, we are very concerned. And so we're going to have to revisit that entire issue. But that kind of conversation about minimum wage, we're not talking about jobs. we need to reopen our economy, figure out how we're going to reopen tourism, and maybe reimagine tourism, and then reimagine all of the other types of jobs so that we can get the jobs we will need for people instead of just minimum wages.
Yeah, it's a different world. And coming back into the next session next year, do you think you're going to be just dealing with the repercussions from coronavirus, or will you be able to return to some of that majority package that didn't make it through this time?
So, James, I'm a great believer that we can chew gum, talk, walk, and do all of those things at the same time. And I think that we demonstrated that the legislature could do that this year, despite the tremendous challenges we had. We did take up important issues as well as address the immediate needs that came about because of COVID-19. And I think we're going to be able to do that next year. I think next year it's going to be challenging because clearly tax revenues have just plummeted. So we're going to be dealing with those issues front and center with the budget. There was a commitment by the legislature, by the House and the Senate, to not institute furloughs and cutting of services, because we know from the last recession that doing those things actually slows down economic recovery. So the question is how do we piece all of this together? You know, there's going to be more federal legislation, federal money, hopefully coming down, but we cannot put all of our eggs in that basket. We need to really understand and try to reimagine our economy, work with what we have, encourage our local economy to boost up, especially in light of now the governor's pushing back of the welcoming tourists back. I think this is the opportunity where we have to really go inwards. And I know people say that we don't have enough in our local economy to really keep us afloat, but we need to now take this time to do that. We have to figure out how do we really promote growing food for our own. How do we promote those local energy jobs? How do we promote those local health jobs? And we have the pieces in place because of some of the things that we did this year.
Yeah, you're right. And a lot of people are still suffering right now, which brings us to the Federal CARES Act money. I believe $365 million was allocated for Hawaii to offset the negative economic impacts of the coronavirus. What are some of the ways that the House the legislature has put those funds to use for people who are suffering right now?
So there's been a lot of attention paid to the monies that we are going to be allocating, but I really want to emphasize the time. You know, the legislature took the time to say that we want this money to extend from July to December. So I think that's one of the key points that I want to put out there, is that this immediate relief, we're looking at it over a 6-month period because we understand that recovery might take that long. There's been a lot of attention paid to the $100 weekly supplemental state unemployment that will go in place of the federal monies that we're going to lose, which is $600 a month. I don't want people to despair with that, because another thing that the legislature did was we allocated $100 million in the CARES money for rental relief. Mm-hmm. So in addition to the $100 a week, if you qualify for that, because that's for unemployment, that household will also likely qualify for about approximately $500 in rental relief. So this is going to be supplement. If you think about what a family might get for a month, they're going to get $100 a week. So that's $400 a month plus $500 in rental relief. And so we really want individuals to make sure that their rent is going to be paid through that rental relief program, that they can access all the things that they need for a living through the $100 a month plus up, in addition to their state unemployment, which they'll receive. And then the legislature put quite a bit of money, quite a bit of the CARES funds towards food relief, as well as PPE for various sectors that we know need to get stood up so that our family and friends can go back to work. So by PPE, what I mean by that is personal protective equipment and sanitation supplies. And we made sure that the agencies and the organizations that would get that PPE were not just hospitals, but nursing facilities, care homes, and most importantly, small businesses, nonprofit organizations, and early education, early learning centers. So, and schools. So this is $100 million appropriation that hopefully will help to ease the operating expenses that we know that all of these essential services and agencies are going to need. And hopefully, as they get the PPE, those operational costs can be mitigated for a short period of time, because at some point, everyone's going to have to, budget that into their operational cost, and then hopefully get people back to work, and hope they feel safe. And then another really exciting area of what we did with the CARES money was we put in about $56 million into assisting local businesses, manufacturing, small manufacturing companies who can start to help us, again, reimagine and pivot and refocus our economy. So those are really jobs programs. We really want the small business community to take those funds, to take the training monies that we set aside, and hopefully create jobs for individuals who are recently unemployed and get them into places where they can see some hope.
Yeah, hope is important. I just heard yesterday during the House Select Committee on COVID-19 that up to 40% of our adult population has either missed a rent payment or is expecting to miss a rent payment. And that's tragic. But when we passed the legislature passed this bill, when do you think it can get to people's hands? Is it up to the governor now?
So what was really good, and I think in part from the COVID committee, and one of the things that we learned from this experience is the importance of collaboration. So even as we put that bill to rest and figured out what we were going to do on the back end, and this is something that we did with the majority package. The legislature has been working very closely with community stakeholders, with agency leaders to make sure that these programs can stand up very quickly. So, for example, Resigning died on Friday. Monday, yes, we're back right in with a COVID committee for the House. Tomorrow, we are meeting with housing advocates and with legislators and with agency heads to talk about how are we making sure that this rent relief program is going to get stood up quickly. So we've already been talking about that, but now we're just kind of finalizing those plans. And that is, thank you for mentioning that, James, because I think people think of the legislature as passing bills. That is clearly one of the primary things we do. But we also have the power to convene. And that's what I think this pandemic has shown what Hawaii is good at, convening and collaborating. And so on the area of rent relief, the counties have been doing an amazing job as well because they had their own set of CARES monies. So what we need to do is make sure that all of these programs are working together so that people can get the relief that they need.
Yeah. Well, outside of the CARES Act funding, what are some of the other important bills that were passed during this session? I know it was shorter than usual and less total bills, but some of them were very important. Can you tell us about a few of those?
Sure. In the area of homelessness, again, that's been a very critical area that the House has been focused on for the last 3 to 5 years, under the leadership of Speaker Scott Saiki, as well as Housing Chair Tom Brower and Homelessness Human Services Chair Joy Sanbuenaventura. We passed a number of critical bills. One of them is going to allow for temporary leases for areas where there's been emergency homeless camps that have emerged. And so that's going to that was passed. We extended the program dates for the LEAD, the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion programs, as well as the emergency assessment programs where we help to make sure that people who are homeless and are entering our emergency room services have services outside. So we did a lot with the homelessness area. I'd also say, connected to homelessness, we did quite a bit in mental health. The legislature, and again, the House, was very concerned about the social safety net services out there. And we were working with Eddie Mercero at Department of Health. And what we're really doing there is we gave them and ensure that they have sufficient funds to make sure that their stabilization beds and the beds that they have for mental services is available in the community. There was a lot of chatter, the legislature was cutting services, and that was absolutely the most furthest thing from the truth. if there was one area that we ensured that they actually had more access to funds because we knew how critical mental health would be moving further into this pandemic, was mental health. So we also worked with the judiciary, and there was a lot of criminal justice reform where we're going to see that petty nonviolent offenders, rather than incarceration, we're looking for ways to divert them into the mental health treatment arena. And through House Bill 1620 and House Bill 1661, we believe that we're going to have a program that's going to do that and mirror really the best practices that we've learned from the mainland, where instead of incarceration for these petty misdemeanors, that these individuals get committed basically and then get the services that they need within our public health infrastructure system.
Yeah, that is a critical area that people see all the time. Finally, I just wanted to ask you, there's a lot of our viewers, a lot of people out there that want some signs of hope. What can you tell them as we move into the future here? How do you feel about our looking ahead?
So what I would say is that we have to pay attention to the science. We have to pay attention to this virus. We have to be flexible and adaptable. And I think we all have to, at some point, we've already started to do it. We all need to tighten our belts. But then I think within our island state, we have demonstrated that we can crush this virus if we take personal responsibility and follow the guidelines and adhere to that and really do those things like wear a mask, stay home from work if you feel sick. And then those things, those personal things that we do will complement, I believe, what government is trying to do to provide structure and help and relief. And that if we do this together as a community, and it's going to be tough, I think that's another thing people need to hear and that sometimes they're not hearing. This is going to be tough. As we learn more about this virus and we understand its persistence and we understand that maybe it's going to be the vaccine, and that vaccine, again, listening to the scientists, 6 months out is optimistic. Maybe it's more like a year. We need to get ready for that period of time where it's going to be long and hard, and we have to depend on each other, and we have to advocate, obviously, for the relief that we need and we can get from the federal government, because all the states will be doing that. And then when we get those resources in, when we reopen our economy slowly but surely, I think we will come back as a community, because that's the strength of Hawaii. We do this together.
Thank you, Majority Leader Belatti. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Olelo, for all of this opportunity to tell our story.
And thank you to all of our viewers. We'll see you again next season with Live at the Legislature.